welcome back to another lesson. Today's learning goal is I can use long division to divide decimals. So, remember that the dividend is the number that is being divided, and the divisor is the groups that we are dividing the dividend by. So I always remember it by the fact that if you were to put this out inside the house thing, the division house, at the end, the dividend. And the divisor has an or, so it's like divisi or dividend. Okay, the or is in the middle, the end is at the end. So, to divide decimals, it is best to change the expression to a fraction. Remember that the middle line in a fraction is the same thing as the division sign. Then we multiply by a version of 1 so that both the divisor and dividend are whole numbers. But before starting a problem, always give an estimate. This will allow you to have a good idea if your answer is correct at the end of the question. So here we have 5.2 divided by 9. So we're being asked how many groups of 9 can we form from 5.2? Well, obviously we can't form any groups, but we do know that 5/9 is approximately 0.5. Is 0.5 repeating actually. So knowing that, we know that 5.2 divided by 9 will probably be something close to 0.5 repeating. So maybe it's a little bit more, so a little bit more than 0.5 repeating. A little bit more than that. So what we're going to do is put this in fraction form first. So it's 5.2 over 9. Then we're going to multiply this by a form of 1. And we're going to multiply this by 10. Just so that we can have whole numbers. It's a little bit easier to work with whole numbers. 52 over 90. Then we can do 90 on the outside because top dog in the house, 52.0000. And what we have here is how many times 90 goes into 52? Well, obviously 0 because we know that it's supposed to be less than 1. Then we have 90 times 5 is 450. Subtract, we get 70. Bring down the next 0. Then we have how many times a 90 goes into 700? Well, that is 7 times. 7 times 90 is 630. Subtract, we get 70 again. Then we start to see this pattern. So we know that this is going to be 0.57 with the 7 repeating. Some of you guys might be thinking, but Mr. Why can't we just do 5.2 divided by 9? Yes, we could just do 5.2 divided by 9, but sometimes a lot of people think that it's going to be easier to use whole numbers. Okay. In addition, we can't do it if the denominator or our divisor is a decimal. So we have to make sure our divisor is a whole number. So, for example, here we have 2 decimals right here. Okay. And this is asking us how many times can we make 0.12 groups of 0.12 out of 0.22. So we know that 0.24 is double of 0.12, so our estimate should be about a little bit less than 2. So again, we're going to do the same process, 0.22 divided by 0.12. We're going to multiply this time by 100 because we need to move the decimal place over twice. Multiply the top and the bottom by 100 because remember when we have 2 zeros right here, we're moving the decimal over 2 times. And that make sure that we have whole numbers, so we're actually doing 22 divided by 12. Remember that multiplying by a form of 1, this is a form of 1, does not actually change the value of our original expression. Because multiplying by 1 just gets you back the same number. 3 times 1 equals 3, 4 times 1 equals 4, etc., etc. So, let's go ahead and do 22 divided by 12. Again, top dog in the house. How many times does 12 go into 2? Well, that is 1 time. We get 12. Subtract, we get 10. Bring down the next 0. How many times does 12 go into 100? Well, we put our decimal up and we find that that answer is 8 because 8 times 12 is 96. Subtract 96 from 100, we get 4. Let me bring down the next 0. How many times does 12 go into 40? Well, that is 3 times, because 3 times 12 is 36. Subtract, we get 4. Bring down the next one, we get 40 again. So we start to see a pattern where this 3 is going to repeat. And that is very close to what we predicted, which was less than 2. So 1.83 with the 3 repeating is going to be our final answer. Here we're asked to create groups of 0.2 from 0.015. So let's go ahead and start with this. It's going to be hard to do an estimate like this. Well, let's change it to whole numbers first. So we have 0.015 divided by 0.2. We're going to multiply this by 1,000 this time because we need to move this top number, the top decimal over 3 times, 1,000. And as a result, in order to multiply by a form of 1, we also have to multiply the bottom by 1,000, which means we're still going to move this over 3 times, even though we only technically need to move it over twice to make a whole number. So what we get is 15 divided by 200. And now we can realize our answer is going to be very, very small because 20 over 200 is 0.1. We're going to say that our answer is a little bit less than 0.1. So again, we're going to do top dog in the house. We got 15.0000, 200 on the outside. 200 goes into 15 0 times. 200 also goes into 150 0 times. So we're going to put a 0 right here. Remember, this placeholder right here is very, very important. Now the question becomes, how many times does 200 go into 1,500? We realize that is 7 times because 7 times 2 is 14. Add the 2 zeros at the end. Subtract. What we get is 100. Bring down the next 0. Now we're asked, how many times does 200 go into 1,000? Well, that is 5 times. 5 times 200 is 1,000. Subtract, we get 0. So our final answer is 75 thousandths. It is a terminating decimal. So here we got one more of these. Very similar to the last one. Go ahead and try this one out on your own. What you should have found is that we had to multiply by 1,000 over 1,000 to get a whole number. And then what we did was 28 divided by 300. This should have gotten us an answer a little bit less than 0.1 because 30 over 300 is the same as 0.1. So therefore our answer is going to be a little less than 0.1. We need to make sure that we have this placeholder 0 right here when we do our division. So therefore 9 times 300 gets us 2,700. Subtract, we get 100. Drop down to 0. So 300 goes into 1,000 3 times, which is 900. 3 times 300 is 900. Subtract, again we get 100, so we see the pattern. So our final answer is 0.093 with the 3 repeating, and this is a repeating decimal.